right, our next presenter is Alasdair Green. He's going to be talking to us about understanding school vouchers. So give us 1 second while I pull up the slideshow and we do some fancy shenanigans with the table here. It just to the height you want. It's just this up button right here. Yep, just hold it up until it's the height you want. Mhm.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Alasdair Green. I work here in Denton for Denton Independent School District in a wonderful elementary school. I got my undergrad here, my master's here, and I'm now doing a PhD in educational leadership and organization. They've tried, they can't get rid of me. I'm going to stay here a while. A big part of my studies is looking at school finance and in particular public school finance. And as I'm sure you're all aware, we're in some very interesting times just now. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about school vouchers and the research that I have been doing on this subject. First and foremost, contrary to popular media myth, this is not actually a bipartisan issue. This needs to be made very clear. The reasons the vouchers have not passed in Texas so far is because the majority of Democrats and the majority of rural Republicans across the state feel that vouchers are dangerous to public schools. This is not one side against the other. Wanting a quality education is not simply a red or blue issue. It's actually a right for all of us. I recently went up to Pilot Point, it's about 20 miles north of here, which is quite a rural district. And there's no talk of vouchers up there. They don't want them, there's no interest, because so much of the rural community is based around the elementary, middle, and high school, being Friday night lights. They don't want that to change. That's what they love about living in a small town. I want to talk a little bit about debunking these words like parental freedom and the school choice narrative. Private schools don't have to actually keep any children they don't want to. If your child misbehaves, has academic or emotional needs, perhaps needs some additional support, perhaps it's simply the wrong religion. Is your child the type of student they simply don't want to have? They don't have to keep them. And when you look for your parental rights, unfortunately, you're going to find them exactly where you left them, which is on the doorstep of your public school. School choice is a bit of a fallacy. You don't get to choose, you do get to apply. The school is the one who gets to choose, and that's the fundamental truth. It's also worth remembering that private schools charge tuition. Say a school charges $8,000 a year, and suddenly they're getting that instead of from the parent, from the government. They're business savvy. They're trying to make money. They suddenly know that most of their families now have a large amount of extra disposable income. It makes business sense to raise tuition and price people out once again. It's also worth asking, do private school families want everyone to access their schools? Or do parents who can afford to pay private tuition want a degree of exclusivity? And will they demand that that is maintained? Texas is not the only state to discuss vouchers. There's several other states that already have vouchers. In fact, near San Antonio, they've had vouchers before in certain districts in that area. When vouchers get implemented, parents start receiving flyers in the mail. Suddenly, students who live in zip codes that were less desirable for public schools start getting flyers offering them bicycles, iPads, other technologies simply for applying. I'm not making that up. That has truly happened in Indiana. It's all about trying to get hands on that tax money. And once that money goes into private hands, it's very difficult to follow. We simply don't know where it goes. Indiana currently has a voucher system. Some people will say it doesn't work. Some people will say it does work. It's very difficult to tell because if you go to a private school, it's very unregulated. And I don't say that in a bad way, but they don't have to follow the same exam schedule, the same test. So it's comparing apples and oranges. But what we do know is that with the voucher system, 80% of students who use it were already paying for tuition, cash out of their own pocket. And this year, the state of Indiana is actually going to raise public school funding by 5.4%. That's huge and wonderful and a great thing that the state of Indiana is doing. However, they're actually increasing the amount of money for private schools by 72.6%. That increase will benefit 3% of the population, and of that 3%, around 90% already make $200,000 a year or more. I was reading an interesting interview in the Texas Tribune. The interview, the director of a private school. I always want to say humble, but I believe it's humble. The non-Texan in me, humble, right? And it was somebody who vouchers could affect. They could increase the student population. I'm going to give you just a second to read through this, what Ms. Goodall had to say. Of keeping this moving, I'm just going to read that last line for you. If we're allowed to continue operating as we do now, we wouldn't just accept every kid anyway. And that's somebody who would be getting money through the voucher system. The voucher proposal goes far beyond education. The gentleman called Jeff Yass, he's the richest man in Pennsylvania, a multi-billionaire, an early investor in TikTok. He's just donated $6 million to Greg Abbott's fund to help get vouchers passed. This money is actually being used to remove Republicans from rural areas and put in Republicans that will vote for school vouchers. But we have to ask the question, when you don't live in this state and you're donating substantial sums of money to lure money away from public education and place it into private hands, creating a system where some get more than others, what's the reason behind that? Could it be to oppress certain populations? Could it be to highly educate a few and undereducate others? Could it be to educate the type of people who might vote for you? If the goal was truly better education for all, why are we putting all this money into private businessmen's hands? And if the motivation was purely to provide public education options, the voucher proposal would be asking for some of the record surplus that we currently have in this state. We have a huge amount of money that's not assigned to anyone. If we want to improve access to private education, why don't we use some of that? We owe it to ourselves and our students to ask the question, why are people determined to strip public education of funds? And dig for some answers. You might think that I am anti-private education or anti-charter school. Actually couldn't be further from the truth. I've visited and toured several private schools. My own children went to a charter school for a little while. I have friends and family whose children go to private schools. Without exception, they have all been wonderful places with wonderful teachers. And my friends' children and the children of my family have thrived there. I don't have any issue with private schools whatsoever. What I am against is public funds that are meant for the betterment of society being pulled away and placed into private hands to benefit the few and the elite. A quality public education system and also empowering those who desire a private education, they don't need to be mutually exclusive. We can work together on this subject. It truly doesn't have to divide us. If people are unhappy with their local school, as they've got every right to be, we should demand high standards of our local public schools. Let's fix the issues. Let's work together, use the money and the resources we have, and make the changes that need to be made. Now, I drove here today. I live about 2 miles from campus, and I walk about 1 mile from my home as well. I drive on average about 10 miles of Denton roads every week. Denton has 525 miles worth of roads. Found that out this week. So I don't use 98% of Denton's roads. Can anyone in here tell me why I should be paying for roads I never use, filling potholes, maintenance, repairs? Why can't I opt out of those repairs? And I didn't call the police last year, thankfully. Why can't I take that money and funnel it into a private fund? Is that the way we want our society to be? Now, you might think I'm reaching for being a bit ridiculous here and superlatives, and actually I am. I'm being ridiculous. But isn't fracturing our public schools in the same vein? I'm actually going to end this on a slightly personal note. I'm in the process of becoming a US citizen. I filed my paperwork and I have an interview in a couple of weeks. This was a decision I did not take lightly, but advocating for education was one of the main reasons that I decided to do it, as well as the fact that I love living here. When I was applying, I was reminded of the poem called The New Colossus that was written by a woman called Emma Lazarus in 1883. As you can see, it's actually inscribed on the Statue of Liberty. And I want to read the last little passage for you. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send me the homeless, the tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Our public educators lift their lamps daily, providing opportunity, safety, and security for the masses. And they inspire the next generation of young Americans each and every day. So I implore you and I ask you, please do not dim their light and join me in standing up for public education. Thank you, guys.